Welcome everybody.
Welcome.
Today we are going to make Speck. And what is Speck? Speck is the Austrian or Northern Italian version of prosciutto di Parma, which essentially means we're going to take a fresh ham, we are going to cure it in salt and herbs, and then we're going to cold smoke it, and then we're going to hang it to air dry for about 9 months. Now you probably have heard of prosciutto di Parma before, and it's very similar to Speck. The real difference is that with prosciutto di Parma, first, they don't use dried herbs as part of the curing process, and secondly, they don't cold smoke it. They go right from the salt curing to air drying. Whereas with Speck, we add the dried herbs and we also cold smoke. Cold smoking, of course, means we're not using hot smoke, so we're not going to be cooking the ham. We're really just going to be impregnating it with some smokiness, which not only adds flavor, but it's a bacterial antibacterial agent that will help preserve the exterior of the meat while it's air curing.
Low temperature.
Yeah, low temperature. About 70 degrees Fahrenheit is the goal. It sometimes gets a little bit more than that, and it's fine, but you really don't want it to be 200 degrees because then
you don't want to cook.
Exactly, exactly. So let's start with the ham itself. This is a fresh ham, and that means it has not been cooked, it has not been cured, it is raw meat, so you would not want to eat it in this current state. This ham weighs 20.74 pounds, which we're going to round up to 21 pounds, and the weight is important because the weight of the ham indicates how long that it needs to sit in the salt cure. And the rule of thumb is 1 day of curing for every pound of meat, and then you add 1 more day. So we're going to call this 21 pounds, plus 1 makes it 22, so we need 22 days of salt curing. You may wonder what the ham actually is. Well, it's the top portion of the rear leg of a hog or a pig. And they're all about 20-22 pounds for most breeds that you find. And I know when we typically eat hams, they're already cooked for us, they're already smoked. But in this case, this is how we're going to make our Speck, is using a raw one. But before we do anything else, we want to make sure that we've rinsed the ham, we've patted it dry, which we have, and now we're going to add the herbs to it. We use our own herb seasoning mix here. It's called Alpine seasoning. We actually produce this at Mount Salem Kitchen, and you can get it from us if you'd like, or you can use any sort of herb mixture that you have. The key thing is that this is a combination of dried herbs. It also has a little bit of salt in it as well, and that's going to be in addition to the salt that we're going to put in the box. So first thing is you simply rub it in on the exterior. And you do it gently, and you take your time with this. You don't want to rush it. And you're going to do it all the way around. This our Alpine seasoning, which this is inspired by herb seasonings that we found in our travels through Austria and northern Italy.
It smells really good.
Yeah, it does. It smells awesome.
Yeah.
It smells awesome. Before we put it into the box with the salt, let me just point something out. You can see that some of the meat is exposed here, like on the inside and on the side here, as opposed to the outside, which is still covered with fat and skin. That's important to note because after we cold smoke it, we're going to make a paste out of fat and flour, and we're going to rub that paste all over the exposed meat. What that does is it helps encase the entire ham in a layer of fat, so that when it's air drying for those 9 months, the meat part here doesn't get so hard and dry that you can't chew on it. When you do cut prosciutto or Speck, you'll notice there is a little fat on the outside. That's what this is. So we've spread the herbs all over the outside of the ham. Now the next step is Agnieszka is going to prepare the box where it's going to salt cure. So we use a wine box, for empty case of wine. You can see it's got the inserts for the bottles. We remove that. We actually save those. Those are wonderful for lighting fireplace fires or grills outdoors. And a wine box that held 12 750 milliliter wine bottles is almost a perfect size for curing a 20 or 22 pound ham. So Agnieszka's going to put the first garbage bag. We use 2 heavy garbage bags. The first one she puts in is a liner. And it's important to note that some garbage bags these days actually have an artificial scent added to them. It can be vanilla or floral or something like that. That's to try and make your garbage not smell so bad. You don't want to use garbage bags like that for this, because that scent will actually penetrate the speck while it's curing. So you want unscented bags. So that's the liner. The second one she's going to put in is the one that's actually going to hold the ham and the salt. All right,
Yeah.
So we're going to use 2 boxes of kosher salt. Each box is about 3 pounds, 1.5 kilos or thereabouts. And she's going to put the first one, pour it right in, and that's going to be the base. Okay, so Agnieszka's going to put in the first box, which is 3 pounds. And what's going to happen here is the salt cure is going to draw liquid out of the ham. That is the first step in preserving it, because by removing the liquid, it actually prevents the meat from rotting. Okay, so in the box it goes. You cover it, and you move the extra salt around just to make sure that there is no exposed parts. And then we tie it. So the inside bag, the first one, start with that one. So twist it and seal it. That's it. The outside one's going to remain like so. Okay? And just tuck it down.
Yeah.
Just like that. There you go. Okay, so now this is ready to sit for 22 days. We like to leave ours outdoors on the porch of the farmhouse. It's late November here in Hunterdon County, so it's nice and cold, and so that'll ensure that this doesn't get too warm. If you don't have cold temperatures or someplace outdoors to keep it, you can put it in your cellar or your garage, just someplace where it's not going to be hot, okay? And we're going to check this every several days, make sure that the salt is still evenly distributed all over the ham. And what we're going to notice when we do that is the liquid that's going to pool on the bottom of this box. As the water is drawn out of the ham, it literally is going to sit right in the bottom there. And believe it or not, anywhere from 5 to 10% of the weight of this ham is going to get drawn out over the next 22 days. That's pretty cool when you think about it. But this process of salt curing is itself very, very old. I mean, it goes back to antiquity. It's how meats were preserved before we had refrigeration and so forth. And the smoking process, again, is also very, very old. It's a way of preserving meats even longer. So we look forward to seeing you again in about 3 weeks when we pull it in off the porch and we take it out of the salt cure, and we prepare it to be cold smoked. So until then, be well. Well, welcome back. We are now at our second stage of making the speck. The first, of course, is we had to pack it in salt to cure after we'd rubbed a herb mixture all over it and set it outside so it could do its salt curing for 1 day for every pound of meat. And since it was a 21-pound ham, it's going to take at least 21 days for it to salt cure. We've actually let it run a little bit past that, which is fine. The weather around here in Hunterdon for the last 3 weeks has been actually quite cold, so we've actually seen 10-15 degrees Fahrenheit on more than a few nights, and a fair bit of snow and ice, so the temperatures have been ideal for curing outdoors. So the first thing we're going to do is weigh it, primarily so that we can see how much the water has been drawn out of the ham by the salt curing process, and it is substantial. In fact, one of the things we're going to show you is how much water is now on the bottom of the curing basin. And so we'll use this old-fashioned scale. It's quite old, but it's actually quite accurate, so it'll be just what we need for this. We're then going to cut a piece of wire. So this is a 14 gauge wire that we'll cut a strand out, and we're going to drive it through the shank of the Speck. That's so that we can hang it both during the cold smoking process and also the drying process, which will take about 9 months. Okay. So I guess the next step is let's go to the porch and bring in the Speck. All right, so the Speck's been right where we left it about 3 weeks ago. It's been sitting outdoors here, and even though it's been quite cold, it doesn't have to be that cold to do this. But we're going to bring it inside and start to unwrap it. And just remember to use your knees when you lift, because it still is a good 20 pounds and it's dense. We're going to go directly over to the sink. Oh boy, that smells great already. As you can see, it's still got all the salt on top. Now over in this corner here, you can see all that liquid down there? It's pretty significant. That's all the water that's been pulled out of this. You can still see you've got that beautiful coating of herbs. That's our Alpine seasoning mix. And now we're going to reach in. Boy, that's cold. Can you just wipe the salt off the side? There you go. Now you want to wipe the salt off. You don't want to rinse it underwater, because if you do that, you're going to lose all the seasonings that are embedded on the side. Lift it and get it onto the scale. Okay. What does it say? That says 19¼ pounds. And also, I'll just show you what this slush looks like in here again. Like slush on a winter day. That's just salt that is in all the water that was pulled out of the ham.
No paper.
No paper, right.
There you go.
Okay. Agnieszka's going to cut off a piece of wire. So you can get wire like this at almost any decent hardware store. So she's actually taken this down, and it's about 3 feet long, about 1 meter, and she's bent it in half. And now she's going to drive it right through it. So she's down about 4 inches.
Okay, just be careful.
Yeah, I'll hold that.
I hold this. You have to go through to the skin.
And come out the other side. Be careful.
Yep.
Here it comes. All right. It's going this way. So then you bend it up. So she's driving it. And we pull. Up to the point where you bent. Okay?
Yeah.
There you go. Now, very important, we have to twist these. You want to twist? Mm-hmm. So this wire is what the ham is going to hang on while it's smoking, and also when it's dry aging. So as you can see, she twists and twists again.
Okay.
So now she's going to lift. Can you lift? Perfect. Get the other side too, so she can show that. See?
It's still heavy.
Yes, it's still 20 pounds. Okay, beautiful. Let's get it back in. Back outside we go. 5 more days and then we're into the smoker. Well, good morning. We are actively smoking away here. It's the 28th of December, and about 4 weeks ago we began this journey of preparing Speck, and of course the first 3 weeks were spent with the ham curing in salt and herbs, and that was to draw out as much of the water from the meat as possible, and we took about 6% of the water out that way. And the second big step is what we're doing today, and that's called cold smoking, and we're doing that by building a home smoker out of a wine barrel. This is a 225 liter wine barrel from our winery here, and we take the ends off, and as you saw previously, we dug a pit, we have a chimney, and we've got a fire out here, and the whole principle is this. This fire is generating just enough smoke that it gets drawn up through the chimney and into the barrel where the ham or Speck is hanging and being gently smoked for about 6 hours. And so we're burning hardwood here. This is ash from the property here, from the farm, and it is, let's see, we've been at this now for about 3.5 hours, and have a ways to go yet. We've got some friends joining us later for the end. So the next step is going to be to actually put some applewood chips into this. The applewood has been soaking, and I'm going to get that now and toss it right on the fire. These are applewood chips that have been soaking for about 30 minutes, and now they're going to smoke. We soak them in water so that that actually slows down the burning process and also produces a little bit more smoke. And you put it directly on the fire. You can hear it hiss a little bit. And stir it up just a little to make sure that we're getting it all right on the flames. Some people like to use hickory, others like to use mesquite. Our preference is applewood. It adds a little sweetness to the meat, and without adding too much flavor itself. We're cold smoking today, and what that means is we're smoking at a relatively low temperature. You know, when you're smoking meats at a higher temperature, that actually cooks the meat, and it doesn't matter if it's a ham or if it's sausage or it's some other cut like that. We're not actually trying to cook it. We're actually just trying to smoke it. The reason for smoking it is it actually adds a little flavor, but it also adds a antibacterial agent that's going to prevent the meat from spoiling while it's hanging. And last but not least, the smokiness keeps critters away, like insects and things like that that might otherwise like to find their way in some meat that is that's hanging. Cold smoking and salting of foods, this is a very, very old process. It's how foods were preserved many, many years ago, and we like to keep that tradition alive here, and it's also how you make really fine Speck. So what I'd like to do now is have you come over and take a look at what we've got here actually in the smoker. Okay, as you can see here, we've got a temperature gauge with a probe that's inside the smoker. It's currently showing 93 degrees Fahrenheit. Cold smoking, you're really aiming for about 70 degrees Fahrenheit. And so while this is running a little warm, we're not really that concerned about that, because it's certainly not cooking the meat at that temperature. And also it's important to remember, this is a very imprecise system we have here, and the temperature will vary a bit. I mean, the wind has just picked up a bit, so you can see the temperature's dropped to 92 degrees inside. Temperature change, wind speed change, all those things can have an impact on the temperature inside the smoker itself. But now I want you to see what's actually in here. So you can see there's 3 boards here. The 2 on the outside are actually holding the burlap top down. The one in the middle is what the Speck is hanging on. So it's now 92 degrees. Let me just pull this back. And here's our probe, which I'm going to remove for just a moment. And now I'm going to lift this up so you can see it. See what this is like now? Looks beautiful. Here's the back side. And back in it she'll go. So that's the basics of cold smoking. And we've got several more hours to go. And And of course, once this is done, we've got one more step we're going to do today, and that's to just fill in some of the exposed parts of the meat before we wrap it in burlap, and it gets hung in a cool, dry place like the loft of our wine barn, where it's going to hang for the next 9 months. So it is now 4:30 p.m. We've been smoking this for 8 hours, and it's now time to bring it in. So here's what it looks like, and it's in perfect condition. And we'll bring this into the farmhouse, let it cool off a little bit, and we're going to coat the outside that is where the meat's exposed, and then this will get wrapped and hung up in the loft right behind you. So thank you for joining us today. It's been a wonderful day. It's been about 50 degrees in late December, which we don't typically have here. Lovely. So thanks for being with us. See you soon. All right, welcome back. We are now about to enter the longest phase of the Speck making process. As you recall, we smoked the Speck for about a day, and we pulled it out of the smoker and we let it cool down. Even though the Speck wasn't really hot, you want it to cool down and reach an ambient temperature. We then prepared a special coating. It's a paste made of fat and flour, which we've smeared over the exposed parts of the meat here. That's so that when the Speck is air drying, those parts don't become too hard to really cut into or chew. And so that's been spread over it, and now we've laid the ham on top of the same piece of burlap that we used to cover the smoker outside, and we're going to wrap it up and hang it. You can hear it's already getting a little tougher, which is perfect. I wish you could smell it, guys. It smells really, really good. But we're now going to wrap it up, and there's a bit of an art to this. You want to be sure that it's covered.
It's like a baby.
Yeah, just like a baby. And I say there's an art to it, which means if you mess it up, you get to do it over again. Okay? So the first part is we're going to tie the neck here. Can you get that one?
Mm-hmm.
And she's going to go around a couple times. Okay, let me lift it up so you can, it's much easier this way. Now the reason we wrap it in burlap, it's kind of obvious, I guess, right? You don't want critters, flies, whatever that might be buzzing around to make a home on the outside of the Speck. Okay, down and across the front. Wunderbar. Okay, so you want to hang it? Up it goes. Yeah, it is like a baby. It weighs about 19 pounds now too, so that's a big baby.
Yes.
If we were doing this in Austria or some other part of Central Europe, they would often hang these things in barns that are exposed to the winds from the outdoors, and that's how they naturally cool it cool it and dry it without any artificial means. So there we are. We've got 9 months to go, and I can't wait until September to try it. See you then.